This is the Downtown Series podcast, the podcast for everything Chicago real estate and beyond. Each episode, you will hear from some of Chicago's leading experts straight from our beautiful office here at Downtown Apartment Company. I'm Ben Creamer. Join us as we dive deep into Chicago real estate landscape, discuss upcoming developments, and provide you with the knowledge to be on pulse of the market. As always, choose wisely, live stylishly. Today is Thursday, March 12th. Here with us today is Quentin Green, broker at Downtown Apartment Company, and our guest, Michael Edwards, President and CEO of Chicago Loop Alliance. Michael has been with Chicago Loop Alliance since 2012 and was integral in overseeing CLA's 5-year strategic action plan, which included a comprehensive street team program, activation of underperforming public spaces, and a renewed leadership role in Chicago. Michael is also a founding member of the Global Business Districts Innovation Club and has managed various successful downtown organizations in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Spokane, Washington, providing advocacy and government policy creation, urban planning and design services, promotion and marketing, essential clean and safe services, and parking and transportation initiatives. Thanks, Michael, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just get right into it. For those people out there who are not familiar with CLA, why don't you give us a little background of CLA, the origin as State Street Commission, and tell us what project CLA is known for.
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity again. Chicago Loop Alliance has been around for a long time. It was previously known as the Greater State Street Council, and it was actually started when the department stores were on State Street 100 years ago, back in the 1920s. In fact, Marshall Fields is in our minute books.
Wow.
We're that old. It changed and became the modern group that it is now in 1997. The city renovated State Street back at the time. It was a bus mall. It was converted back to the street we see today. And because of that, it needed to be taken care of. And so they created a special service area, or SSA 2015, which provides funding through the property owners on that street to provide services. So Chicago Loop Alliance was born in 1997. A couple of groups came together, and we were able to begin providing the services, that you articulated earlier, making State Street clean, safe, beautiful, so that we can get more economic activity on the street.
Absolutely. And then we're always interested, Michael, I think you're a phenomenal leader, and if you can just offer us a little background about yourself.
I'm a history major that's done okay. So, history and political science major, Canisius College, nice Jesuit school, much like
Jesuit
Loyola.
Myself as well.
Oh, great,
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, and went to graduate school, got a master's in public administration, so an MBA for sort of the public side of the universe. From the University of Pittsburgh, and then have been practicing economic development since. And as you stated earlier, this is my third downtown management program. Okay. And the career track is larger cities. So I went from my hometown of Buffalo, New York, which we can get into later, Spokane, Pittsburgh, and now Chicago. So they just kind of get bigger. The issues are very much the same. Mm-hmm. Same issues we're dealing with here in Chicago, we're dealing with in little old Spokane of 200,000 people. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like a very niche job market. So
it is actually the folks in my profession. We get together once a year, and there's over 1,000 groups like ours around just in America.
Sure.
Wow.
And around the world is of course even more. And people are recognizing that urban areas need a certain degree of attention. Mm-hmm. And so this is probably before your time, but there used to be these things called shopping malls. And at the time, shopping malls were just killing downtowns. It's really why they put State Street into a bus mall, was to compete with the suburbs.
Sure.
And people like me say it's because of us that people are coming back to downtowns. I say that it's because people like us grew up watching Seinfeld, and people like you grew up watching Friends, and those stories all took place in downtowns, in cool urban settings.
Yeah.
That's how people grew up. And so the millennials today are like, hey, I'm going to go to the Downtown Apartment Company and get me a place downtown because cities are cool again.
It's true. I don't know about you. I'm Seinfeld all day over Friends. I'm
my
age
for
may
sure.
not look it, but I'm
for
Seinfeld.
sure. Well, Quentin gives me a hard time, about my age, but technically we're both millennials.
We are both
Technically.
on the extreme opposite
I'm
sides of
right
the
on the
millennial spectrum.
tip there, and it depends, what
Erica,
gauge you
though.
go by. But well, Erica, that's a whole different story.
Yeah. Cool. So, Michael, Cody and I, and Cody's the producer for this podcast, we actually attended the Evolving Public Way. I don't know if you remember that one. Awesome event you guys held. And that went really deep into sort of how the loop has transformed from a historical context with how the boulevards functioned in the road system. So tell us a little bit about, the loop's evolving state.
Well, it used to be just a 9 to 5 place, and that's really, we still tend to struggle against that. That the loop appeared to be, in many people's minds, dead after 5 o'clock. As someone who actually lived downtown in an apartment that was found by the Downtown Apartment Company, little plug for the company, and lived downtown for 4 years, I can tell you that downtown is not dead after 5. And I was, my opportunity was to come in 2012 when things were coming back out of the recession, and people were moving back to the Loop again. So it's one of the fastest growing neighborhoods. So the big change downtown in the Loop is the residential population. There used to be 40 people living on State Street, our target area, and now there's 2,000 people living on State Street. And so that requires a whole different way of people using downtown. So how people interact on the sidewalk, certainly the rise of Uber and Divvy and Lyft and car sharing, just sort of how people get around, where you need curb cuts just to drop people off. I mean, all of those things are playing a role in sort of how downtown either does or doesn't function.
Sure, yeah. So then how would you say the Loop has transformed since you've been president and CEO there? What are some major accomplishments that you've seen?
Well, I think I'm always amazed at these projects that keep going up downtown. So, everything from Revival Food Hall, which sort of set the bar for food halls that are now, hugely popular around all around the city. The creation of all of this energy around residential development. And when it was a 9 to 5 downtown, this was prior to Millennium Park. So Millennium Park, right, 5 or 6 years ago, I don't even know, 10 years ago, a while ago, Millennium Park came in, and it really just sort of fundamentally changed how people use the Loop, right? It's become everybody's porch, everybody's front yard. It's where everybody comes to have fun. And so that was great. And then the Riverwalk showed up, and now everybody comes down to the Riverwalk. And so there's these really great amenities that aren't commercial. They're not 9 to 5. They're 24/7 kind of places that are now centered in the Loop, and that's really transformed how people not only use the Loop but perceive the Loop.
Yeah, I think especially if someone hasn't been down by the Riverwalk in the evening, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
What's going on there.
And the money that they're making down there is really amazing.
Oh yeah.
You only have to sell a few glasses of $20 wine.
Yeah, right.
To make a few bucks.
I have so many clients who lived in Chicago in the early 2000s and 90s. They come back here and they're blown away with the development, not only from the amount of buildings you have, but just with some of the public spaces. It's completely different.
Yes. Yes, and people are rediscovering their public spaces.
They really are.
We do a lot of public space activation. It's kind of the trend in downtowns, and so one of our activities is called Activate, which is where we essentially, some people might say we're throwing parties in alleys. I like to think we're doing a strategic intervention to demonstrate the economic capacity of the Loop within
those are my Saturday nights.
Those cool spaces, and people are rediscovering the city, and multiple generations are. It's not just the millennials. It's the everybody else and the kids, and even the Riverwalk is really very family friendly. So it's a wonderful place now.
I'm amazed by the amount of people for Activate that, and how it just brightens, you guys pick a different particular alley or right within the, and it's just different artists that comes, you have different themes with it, and it's just, it's really cool.
It's an opportunity for us. We are perceived as a bit of a chamber, sort of the old white guys, right? But it's an opportunity for us to provide a platform where all of Chicago can get together. So the artists that we bring in, the populations that we attract, they come from all over the neighborhoods. We get about 5,000 to 6,000 people RSVPing for the event.
Wow.
And then we typically get 3,000 to show up over
Wow.
over a 5-hour period, and it's everybody from Chicago, and it's just
Yeah.
a place where we finally, as an organization, become a bit more diverse and more representative of the city. And so we love the program. It's not an easy program, but it's a great program to really kind of bring Chicago together. And we're really happy that the city has had some interest, the administration has had some interest in scaling that to other neighborhoods around the city, south and west neighborhoods. And we're looking forward to working with them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Michael, what are some of the biggest difficulties you have with your job? You have a lot of responsibility, and what do you find that is?
Well, one is the perception that the Loop is still 9 to 5. So from a marketing perspective, a branding perspective, that's difficult. But for a long time, it was the only place really for business development. Well, the rise of Fulton Market, the rise of the post office, I guess they're now calling it the post office district, the announcement of these mega developments that are just outside of downtown. Those have all gotten people in downtown Loop property owners, commercial property owners, a little more sensitive to kind of what's going on. And right now, the cost of locating in the Loop is actually less expensive than it is in Fulton Market for commercial development, by a lot.
Right.
And so there's this sort of urgency, finally, that we need to do something. Prior to that, there was no urgency. There's no other place for people to go. Businesses are going to locate in the Loop. It's clean enough. It's beautiful enough. And at the time, we were really competing with other cities like New York and LA for investment, and maybe even globally. Yeah. And all of a sudden, we're competing with Sterling Bay.
Yes.
And the mega developments that are proposed around us. And I think many of the property owners downtown are beginning to realize that they need to think about their buildings in a different way. Really in a way that probably DAC has been thinking about downtown for a long time. It has to be more fun, more transparent, more open. People have to be able to engage and experience these things. Swimming in a pool on the top of a building is, a pretty interesting thing to do. And so this amenity arms race that everybody's talking about within the residential sectors, are now being played out in the commercial properties.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a new mayor in office, Michael, and tell us a little bit about what it's like to work with Mayor Lightfoot's administration, and maybe how it's been a little different from the previous.
Yeah, it's a lot different. Mayor Lightfoot has a different focus, which is on the surrounding neighborhoods. We're very supportive of that. The previous mayor was a little bit more downtown centric,
Sure.
Which we appreciated at the time, but we recognize there's a new reality. We have had actually our Downtown Future series. We've had programs on kind of flipping the script. Typically people say what's good for downtown is good for the neighborhoods. I think everybody would agree that's not true. The west and south neighborhoods have not benefited from a healthy downtown. And so we flipped the script on that at a recent Downtown Futures and asked, what's the benefit to downtown if it's surrounded by healthy, safe, clean, productive neighborhoods? Well, it would be huge. The benefit would be huge.
Right.
And so we are looking for ways to partner with the mayor's administration on ways that we can work together. So just a couple of examples. One is that we're partners with something called Hospitality Hires, which is coming up on April 20th downtown. Okay. And this is where Cook County workforce and the neighborhood groups all around Chicago, not just south and west, bring pre-qualified candidates together for jobs. And our jobs, Chicago Loop Alliance, the Magnificent Mile Association, and others, are to bring employers. And it's essentially a super job fair. And so 600 applicants show up. There's 60 businesses that are there that are all looking for people. And up until the last couple of weeks with the coronavirus, there was 500 hospitality jobs wanting downtown. I mean, the hospitality industry was, saying we can't find people. And so there are all sorts of opportunities downtown. And if we can connect the neighborhoods and folks that haven't been able to find a way to connect to downtown, that's sort of an example of how downtown can benefit the neighborhoods. The other one is the scaling of Activate and these things that we found success with to generate excitement out in the neighborhoods. We're also thinking about and have begun doing a pop-up retail program. And so there's a group called Boxville. It's out in the western neighborhoods. And we'd love to give them an opportunity to set up and be around all of these people that come to the Loop to see if their idea takes hold and they can be more successful.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a big thing too with especially Invest Southwest is it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. You can invest downtown, you can invest in the neighborhoods,
Totally.
right? You don't have to take one from the other to put it somewhere else. So I think it's definitely a good way to look at it.
But I do think it does need you got to change your mindset. And I
Absolutely,
think
sure.
that I think the mayor's really great at that part of it. And how it actually, she's got this program, neighborhood investment program. So any development that happens downtown, there's a percentage gets thrown off. And under the past administration, that was put into a pot of money as a loan for a neighborhood project.
Okay.
And now that can be a grant.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little bit more. It should have a more stimulus effect than the loan
Interesting.
program.
So let's see. Many of our listeners, we have careers, backgrounds, all over the place, but we are always going to be accessing Loop one way or the other. So I guess tell us a little bit about what we can expect from you guys in the next 5 years. Is there anything you'd like to tell our audience directly?
Well, I think that, and we touched on this a little bit, with the rise of Fulton Market specifically, and the moving of these large bank building tenants off of LaSalle, there's this real concern of what is going on with the Central Loop, which is the spine of which is LaSalle Street, and I think what people will see is on a commercial basis, buildings becoming much more like as I indicated earlier, the amenity race that happened on the residential side. So what typically happens now in commercial properties, or for the last 100 years, is that every square foot of that property has to make money, has to generate income. And so that's why you tend to see credit tenants, which tend to be CVSs and banks and ATMs, right? Not the most exciting thing for somebody who's starting a career to come into a building that has an ATM in the downstairs. What needs to happen is more entrepreneurial or more high-tech landlords, commercial landlords. And so they might have to take a risk on a restaurant and not make money on the restaurant, but adding 10 cents a square foot to all the properties above, or all the tenants above. And that's a totally different way for property owners to think. But I think what career people will see is more tech opportunities downtown, more different kinds of opportunities, something a little bit more akin to what you might be seeing in the Fulton Market. But these older buildings will be retrofitted so that they speak to what they're looking for, a place to meet for friends. I learned this term last night, positive transition. So if you go from, have you guys heard of this term, positive transition?
I have not, no.
Okay, so positive transition is I meet my friends after work and we walk down to a little club or something down the street, and then we want a positive transition to the place for dinner. So either that's the bar becoming a dance floor, or it's an easy walk.
Sure.
There's so much density, it's an easy walk. It's a positive transition. It's not, we all got to get in an Uber, we all got to meet up at another place. It's no friction, right?
Yeah.
The party goes on.
The pregame to the game
and
to
it's
the
close
postgame.
by. It's close by.
It's close by, it's walkable, and it's not a boring walk. So this also came up last night. So the Loop, the Loop is huge. And so, in Fulton Market is not. And so Fulton Market, in many ways, feels good because of its scale. Okay? There's smaller buildings, 4- and 5-story buildings, and so all of the restaurants feel closer together because it's a smaller area. Well, there are nice restaurants in the Loop. They are becoming nicer over time, but they're also 4 blocks apart.
Right.
And sometimes the walk from one to the other is a bit boring. And so they feel much farther than they really are.
Okay.
And so we need to do a better job of that. Our downtown buildings need to be more open and transparent, more light in them. And those are things that I think career people will start to see downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to start a career, it's not a bad place to start a career in the Loop in Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah, no question.
Right? I mean, you're really part of the global infrastructure. And, we are part of a global group now. And attracting talent is like the number one thing for global business districts around the world. yes, we're competing with these proposed mega developments, but we're also competing for talent around the world. And, we can hold our own. There was a recent study done of the attractiveness of global business districts, and this was just updated. I don't have the updated information, but in 2018, the Chicago Loop was ranked 7th in terms of its connectivity to the world, its international airport, the amount of talent that's here, the number of headquarters, square footage of office
in the
space.
world, right?
In the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in the world.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So if you're going to start a career, okay, if you're not in New York or LA, well, you better be in the Loop, or you're kind of nowhere.
I remember walking the Loop for my first interview, and I still walk by the spot where I was sitting there prepping, and it was...
Yeah, it's a great place to start a career. Great place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is.
And to live.
And to live.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Michael, how, as our listeners, how can they get more involved with CLA? Obviously, you have a large network of businesses that are members, of course, and, Downtown Apartment Company, same, like we've really enjoyed being part of CLA.
That's great.
So what maybe, there's a lot of different events. I know we send our team, and there's a lot of great networking events at unique places. So how can people get involved?
Right. So they could start by going to loopchicago.com. That's our website. And as you indicated, Ben, we are a membership organization. We have about 300 members. We're looking to grow that. We're a little bit different than most business organizations because we have a very diverse membership base. And so you'll go to one of our, we call them a Looped In business networking event, typically in some cool new space downtown, typically catered by one of our great restaurants, typically free booze and food. So there you
Sign me
go.
up.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And,
Everyone's going to the website right now.
Yeah.
and but you will meet somebody that owns the building. You'll meet an architect that maybe designed that building over there. You'll meet the head of the auditorium theater that is booking the Joffrey Ballet for their next gig there. You'll meet the Joffrey Ballet. There's lots of people doing lots of different things, and there's also lots of different generations. So you'll meet the folks that have built the Loop that you're in now, and you'll meet the people that are currently building it, and then the folks that want to build it and be part of that. So we like to think that they're pretty open to all. And as a membership organization, we understand that sometimes business networking is a little difficult, a little challenging. And so one of the things we do is before the event, we will send out the RSVP list. Here's everybody who said they're going to be here. If there's anybody on this list that you want to meet, CLA staff is there to introduce you. We'll be there to introduce you. Just tell us who you want to meet, and we'll make that introduction. And then you're off to the races.
Yeah,
so
nice.
it's a little way to, and that whether you're new to the organization or you're an existing member or you come, just to kind of try it out, we'd be happy to introduce folks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. There's also a lot of things that we do. So we certainly have lots of committees. We'd very much like to start an emerging leader group. So if any of your listeners are interested and feel that they are an emerging leader, we'd like to do that. We need an emerging leader to emerge to sort of start that, because we're not emerging leaders. We've sort of been around, and we like people to come in with new ideas. And so if any of your listeners want to do that, we're all about that.
Very cool.
We do have a big project coming up this year that we'd love for people to get involved in. It's called Elevate State.
Yes, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Elevate State is our planning process with Site Design Group, which is the consulting firm that presented at the annual meeting that you attended.
Right.
Which was great. The annual meeting is always a terrific event.
Yeah.
Quentin was there as well.
And everything within an hour, which is the best part. Most people say, like, wow, that was a lot of information, and thanks for getting me out on time.
And great entertainment.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
too.
So,
yeah. So Elevate State is a process to rethink State Street. And so some of the things we've already touched on, like how do Ubers access State Street?
Right.
What's the congestion issue? Do we really need this many lanes? Are there buses from a mobility point of view? But there's also a place perspective. So Pritzker Park is totally utilized at the south end of State Street. We are activating the north end of State Street, which is, we call it the Gateway. People have probably seen umbrella tables and stuff up by the Witt Hotel.
Right.
There's all this space in the center of the street all the way down that was engineered out. Those were supposed to be medians and planters and trees, much like you see on North Michigan Avenue. That all got engineered out when the street was put in. Could those be turned into something? The space in front of the Chicago Theater, in the middle of the street, you might see people. I think Erica had her wedding pictures taken there, or
I know exactly what you're
some
talking
of her
about.
wedding pictures taken.
I don't know if there was multiple.
She found every
locations
corner
there.
of the city and just got a few
so
pictures
great.
off.
And so picture that as just raised a little bit, and that there's a Starbucks or a coffee shop in the center
Yeah.
of that. A place where people can actually safely take that picture. It
Right.
would be a huge destination, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And again, generate more foot traffic and more activity on State Street. State Street's already a very busy street, so we have counters, we count people. And so in the middle of summer, there's about 2 million people. Now, a lot of these are the same people, but there's 2 million eyeballs, 4 million
4 million,
eyeballs
yep.
on State Street in a week in midsummer. And
Wow.
right now, it's still 1.5 million people. I mean, there's a lot of people on
Right.
State Street.
Yeah.
And we want to take advantage of that. So it's about place, it's about mobility, but it's also about the market. So how do your customers shop now? Well, I go home and my there's 6 boxes of Amazon sitting in the front door, and I'm like, your dad works downtown. He's supposed to shop on State Street.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
That's funny.
And so how do people shop now? They shop in a totally different way, and so
Right.
maybe some of these stores on State Street should be more open and transparent. The garage doors comes up, the
Yeah,
merchandise
right.
comes out, right? It's all about the experience. So what does that mean? And so we would like the input of your listeners to tell us what they would like to see on State Street.
Yeah.
And so if you go to our website and click on Elevate State, you can find out all the information. We just started that process. We'd love to have them.
That's
Awesome.
very cool. Yeah.
And what is the timing on that, right? Because you're getting a lot of different groups involved, and so what is the timeline looking for something like that?
So our goal is to have a finished study by November.
Wow.
It may not be published until first quarter of next year, but our hope is that it would drive future investment decisions. So we spend about $3 million a year on State Street as part of our special service area.
Okay.
And so right now we're replacing trees and grates and banners and all sorts of things.
Got it.
And it's getting expensive because the street's 25 years old.
Right.
And so the impetus for this was to really inform a capital budget as we go forward. And then as we're doing that, to make the street more relevant to today's shopper. And there's all these people living on the street. So this is a kind of a crazy idea, but right now the street is theaters to the north, retail in the center, and universities to the south between Wacker and Ida B. Wells. That's how it's sort of set up now. And we're thinking that with the introduction and your great work of residential on State Street, how does residential play into those three groups, those
Sure.
three groupings? And we think that there's really some opportunity there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we always ask Michael when people come on one place that you recommend to go in the city. Obviously, you're very familiar with
Yeah.
the city, the Loop. What's one place if you're visiting from out of town you need to go there?
Okay, so I would say,
You can have more.
well, I have two.
Okay,
I have two.
all right.
So
Fine.
one,
Works. Fair enough.
your listeners will say like, "Oh God, been there." So that would be the Riverwalk. So the Riverwalk is just
It's
an
not bad.
amazing place where you can meet lots of people, and it's always a good time. Doesn't matter where you go, Island Party Hut, the City Winery. It doesn't matter. You're going to have a great time, and you're part of the vibe of the city, right? I mean, really the vibe of the city. A place that probably most of your listeners wouldn't go is a place called Iwan Rees. Iwan Rees is IWANRIES.
Okay.
It's the oldest business in the Loop.
Oh, wow.
It is a cigar store and a cigar bar.
Okay.
And it's hard to smoke cigars inside anywhere in America and in Chicago. But this is on Wabash. It's on the second floor of the cigar bar. It's $15 to get in. Bring your own cigars. Bring your own liquor. And you're at the second
Wow.
floor, and the train is rolling by
Yeah.
right at the same level. And 1865. This store has been there since
No
since
kidding.
the Civil War, right?
Wow.
It survived
Yeah.
survived the fire and everything else, and it's an eclectic group of people
Sure.
that go there, and but it's fabulous. fabulous. We have a little club
Yeah.
called Centro, and you have to smoke a cigar, you have to drink whiskey, and you can only talk about the Loop. And that's
Okay.
we do that
Love
about quarterly.
Yeah.
Don't even talk about Naperville. Don't want to hear about it, right?
Well, I didn't know if it was daily or quarterly.
Quarterly, yeah. Daily might get a little
Quarterly's sufficient.
It's
And
about as
it's
Chicago
funny,
as
you
it
drink
gets.
the whiskey and the ideas just start rolling
just start pouring out?
Yeah, my God.
Some of the
things we
best
talk about.
ideas, I'm sure, have come from
Is that maybe how CLA got started?
Yeah, that's the end. That's how CLA got started.
It's a great group. And so we invite, we just have sort of a core group of 4 or 5 of us, and then we'll invite somebody to come in to sort of like bring in a different perspective.
Cool.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
that's
one
awesome.
follow-up question I have for you. With the Riverwalk and everything that's going on, are you familiar with any current plans to sort of expand that further north, south? I know there's some developments going on for the south now, and with Wolf Point East, they're revitalizing that whole strip as well.
I don't.
You don't, yeah.
I don't. I mean, they completed sort of the section in the Loop last year,
Right.
all the way to the lake. So no, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't.
Oh, so it happens there. So final segment is something we call the Sunday Scaries.
Yeah.
A little background. Everyone sort of has their bad days on the job. Our question is, what is the absolute worst day you've had? Whether something that took you by surprise or something that shook you, and what did you do to overcome it?
Right. Okay. So I got sort of 2 answers to this. So the first, in terms of Sunday scaries, my understanding of that was that that's like mid-Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Young people start getting stressed out about what happens on Monday. All right. So
Exactly.
That's how I've been informed.
yeah. Okay. So I mean, that happens to older people too.
Okay.
And so my Sunday scaries is typically when I have a board meeting. Ben's on my board.
Wow.
And so if I got a big board meeting, I have to provide information, some ways lead, but really provide information. And Ben and the other 20 people in the room are like the smartest people in the loop. And so it's a little intimidating to be ready to answer questions from 20 different people about 20 different things. So,
Well, you do a great job.
Yeah.
well, thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. But my worst day ever is I was in my mid-30s.
Okay.
Had my dream job. I was managing downtown Buffalo, New York, my hometown. I mean, it was essentially this job, but in my hometown. And it's not every day you get a job like that. And I went down for my annual review, my first annual review, and was presented with a couple of options. You can sign this letter, or you could sign this letter, and we agreed to part company. And I was shocked, because I thought I was doing a great job. But apparently they did not think I was doing a great job. And I could give you 100 reasons why it was their fault. But as a 35, 36-year-old at the time, it was life-changing in many ways. But from a career perspective, it was don't take anything for granted.
Yep.
If you have a position, the job that you have now, you might not love the job. You got a job, and you should be thankful that you have a job. And work it as hard as you can, and try to be more aware of how you're impacting everything around you, because sometimes you don't know what you're doing. So I learned a lot from that, but that was a really crappy day. Really crappy day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great advice there, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to conclude this. Thanks so much, Michael,
thank
for coming on. And as far as finding CLA, it's Loop Chicago.
LoopChicago.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's lots of things on there. Can I just mention one more thing?
course,
yeah.
You
But
better
my
believe it.
marketing department.
You didn't say that.
So we do have an employee of the month.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So we have employee of the month, and again, you can go online and put in the website loopchicago.com, probably / employee of the month, and you can nominate anybody that works in the loop. And if they're selected, they get $500 worth of gifts and prizes.
Wow, that's awesome.
And they will become part of a mural in the loop. And so we did this last year, so 12 people's faces will be painted on someplace in the loop and will be up for a year. And so
That's
if they
cool.
want to be, immortalized in the loop, nominate a friend.
Yeah.
We'd love to have them.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
there's so
very
many
cool.
people that do so many great things in the loop, from people that you see it on the street, Bellman in front of the Palmer House.
Yeah.
They're like institutions, right?
Right.
To the people that work in our building that take care of us, I mean, they're fantastic people, and the Loop couldn't survive without them. And so
Yeah.
we'd like to celebrate them.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you just go online, you nominate them. And
Yeah,
then
there's a
as
nomination.
More nominations come
there's
in,
a,
they
yeah,
get selected. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, and then we have a criteria. Don't ask me what it is. I'm one step removed from all of that.
Sure.
But you know, we like to have a variety of people, that variety of kinds of jobs. You know, from a
Yeah.
president of a company, you know, to somebody that is, you know, makes our office habitable.
Yeah.
So
And then I know you send out an email too to the members and say, "Hey, here's the employee of the month."
yeah, and we
it's-
celebrate
I've seen
them.
some of
Yep.
that. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
awesome.
And then Elevate State. So also on our website, if anybody wants to be involved, that's cranking up. We're doing focus groups next week, but there will be lots of public meetings to input that they can come and share their thoughts.
Yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
really excited for that. So
Yeah, thank
cool.
you.
Well, thanks
Yeah,
so
thank
much,
you.
Michael.
Yeah,
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Have a wonderful day.